Hey everybody, today we're working on the sports satellite. Let me get my thoughts together. So basically, where we left off, on this back corner, we had come down in here and split this and basically moved it out and welded it back together because we needed this to fit and it didn't. And now it does. Now there's some adjustability to this, but if I put it right about there, she's going to be pretty nice. I mean, good enough. I mean, it was way out before. There was a big air catch here. It was just a mess. So what I would tell people to keep in mind, if you're going to do a set of quarter panels, and like I know people can do a little bit of stuff here and there, but if you've never done quarter panels, now the way he described these, he said these were AMD panels, which everybody says are really, really good panels, and that's okay. But I'm going to show you what was wrong with them. Now, this is a guy who spent 12 years putting this car together with all new steel because it was like a floppy shell that was rotten. Like, he bought it for $500, right? When he bought this car back, because this was the guy owned it, sold the car, and then went through a handful of owners and no one did anything with it. And this was back in like the 80s, right? So he bought the car back about roughly 12, 13 years ago. And he'd sold it for like $200. He bought it back for $500, but the guy that had it had found some parts, which is good. So there's new everything underneath. But basically, how straight is the car? If you measure the frame here and there to the floor and you check things, it seems to be really good. And look, the car's aligned, so it's pretty good. But some of the mistakes that were made, and both corners were changed. Now these corners came up to here, so they were just set on top, so I guess they knocked the old one down a bit, or maybe they didn't, like I wasn't there. So the guy brought me the car to finish it out. Now there's a limit to how much Bondo I'm going to put into something. Now one issue was this door had been reskinned. Now that I'm back on this car, I can kind of just do a quick explanation. You can see how the door sticks out there. You can see what it's doing down there. It's too tight. But if I try to adjust the door, I run out of adjustment. This will hit here. You can actually see in there where it the tip of the door, when you open it, it rubs here, right? Like it doesn't do that now, but if I adjust the back, it does. Now that back corner was out over half an inch. So we've got it about halfway there. And what I had to do was peel the skin open so that it could move. The problem is the skin wasn't just welded on. The guy put some kind of a urethane. So, I wonder if we can see it. There's like a black plastic goop in there. But if you look at all the overhang this has from any, and that's probably fine. That's not an issue. But basically what I have to do now, you throw the heat gun on this, and I'm going to have to go inside the door through here. I'm going to have to take a scraper and cut it so that I can reach up in, put it between the two panels, heat this with the heat gun, and then drag my scraper through. Now the cool thing is that'll scrape out, falls out on the floor. I did a little bit already, and it shrivels up and hardens up, and then it's no longer sticky. So once we break that loose, we should be able to move the door and tweak it to make it work, and then basically tack it, and then, close it all up, weld it back together. I've already done as much as I can taking the front off, but the back's going to have to go. Yeah, so it's got to be in. I mean, and there's no adjusting that. I had a couple buddies go, I just fill the quarter. The problem is, not only will this not work, but the window's got a big gap. Anyway, we've got it halfway there, but it needs more work. Anyway, the other problem with this car, and this is why I'm saying this, I don't know what I'm going to title this video, probably something about quarter panels. So this door gap looks pretty good. And then, yeah, down there it's a little bit tighter. It looks worse than it is on camera because the paint is messing with it. But the gap is basically okay to about here. And there it's not. So we're going to come in, we're going to cut these, hammer them back, and then weld them back shut. Same with the rocker down there. Now the other side is much worse. This side is just ugly, but it actually functions. The other side, I'll show you when I get over there. So, how would I explain that? So let me show you some things that were wrong. Now, the fender didn't fit perfectly over the wheel houses. Now on this side it's okay, but on the other side, when you come down here, when he clamped it together, he put a big ding in here, like it pulled it in too much. And sometimes you got to pay attention to stuff like that. So what I like to do, I'll put a fender on and tack it, but then I'll throw my doors on and everything. You almost got to do the mock-up. It seems like a lot of extra work, but you can't have your quarters sitting like that. And back here, now this side was so out of whack. Now this car had been hitting the back end. And down here, there was a big old dent like a football, or like a softball hit it. But when you come down here, like that's all brand new steel and parts and whatnot. The problem is it was all put back together, the frame was put in, everything was done. But they didn't quite pull the damage out of the back. So, on this side, hang on, it's hard to film when trying to use multiple hands. But you get the idea. See how the crack fits there. Down the side, it's pretty good. Down here, she's going to stick out a wee little bit. I've got a bit of adjustment there, but not much. But before, this whole thing was out by a lot. But what was worse was it was tight up here, and down here it was a 1/4 inch out. So what we had to do there, because we can't unbend where the quarter panel actually wrapped around, and it was all welded in here. There's a limit to how much work you can put into something, and it depends on the budget. Now, I think this car deserves to be cut apart and kind of redone, but the customer just wants it finished out. So what I did is I took some, I believe it's either 18 or 16 gauge, some little pieces I'd kicking around, cut-offs, and I made some strips to extend the fender out. So I'd set it on, found my gap, measured it, made some strips, welded it on this side, came in here, welded it all the way down, and it literally comes up to nothing. Now up here it's just a little bit of weld, but then basically I put the piece back on, I mark a line, grind it till it works, and you basically just keep grinding it off and fitting it till it works. There's a bit of an art to it. The other thing with the quarters, now it could be that the quarters are a little different too, because who knows, right? This car is what, 60 years old or something. The bumper, he had already painted all the jambs, so he had done these, but this was all chipped on both sides. So when the bumper went on, it touched. Now I know these cars are like that, they're very tight, but I think what happened here, when they remake these fenders, this bend is angled. Well, of course, I don't know if you can tell, but this and this, so this is angled harder than this, but if this was angled out that you could push it in, and I mean, it could be that all kinds of things are out a little bit. So I'm going to have to clean it up a bit, but you can see all these dents in here. So what I did is I took one of my small hammers and I knocked the hell out of this and knocked it in. And I mean, I knocked it in probably almost 1/4 inch on each side. So now you'll have a nice little gap here when it's finished out, and the bumper won't rub the paint off the car. When you do quarters, you got to watch that. Other things that were weird. When the quarters were off the car or the old ones were cut. Okay, look at the gap. So it's tight but nice. I've looked at a few of these cars and a lot of them are fairly tight. It gets really tight down here, but it's not bad. It looks okay. We'll go to the other side. Same thing, right? So it slowly gets tighter as it gets down to here. So we have our corners, because we don't want to keep going tighter and tighter. So this all had to be adjusted so that that would, leave a nice gap down here. This side's a little tighter than the other side. Again, before welding these on, The trunk should have been on, and at that point this would have been floppy enough you could have moved it over, you know, maybe anchored it somehow, cross braced it or whatever, just temporarily. So there's little things like that you gotta keep in mind. So I mean, the trunk bolt's way up there, right? So why not have the trunk lid on? That way when you're doing the fenders, you can, I mean, some guys will even tack the fender. They'll get their gap and tack it to here, do all the work, and then cut that open later. And once all the corners all welded, like, that's not gonna move, right? So you gotta watch these things. Some weird damage in here. They put the quarter on before fixing it. Basically, I'm gonna weld a washer here and up here and call it good. He does have this piece. Now, he may bring it to me, and if he does, I'll cut this out, but I guess they cut it off of another car someplace. But he can't find it, so we'll see what happens. Down here, same thing. I got to sand all that filler yet, but you know, there was a couple waffles that were bad. But I mean, this is pretty nice. So these corners, I mean, there's 2 afternoons, 1 in each corner. And then there's a couple hours kind of straightening out that back lower spot. So you've got a day just to fix these mistakes, right? Now, I should have showed this before I ground it all off with the 80. I roughed it all up. Luckily for me, my memory's still somewhat good. But right here, yeah, right here, there's a dent that goes like this. So we're gonna have to fill that out. And what happened, I believe, is he pulled this in real tight with the vice grips to grab it and welded it to the wheelhouse. Not realizing that he should have, you know, tweaked it a bit. And hey, maybe the fender had a little wow in it. He just put it on and it looked good. So keep in mind, you can buy this, I don't know, Longo. It's a 24-inch steel ruler. You can actually see light through that crack. Look, it ain't straight. Whether you get one of these, if you know a furnace guy who does duct work, they've got all kinds of this stuff lying around. Basically what I'm saying is get some straight edges, run it around the car. What I like to do, like these come with that black, right? So I take one of these skinny little Durablocks, and I think I only put like a 120 or something on it. Doesn't matter. I ran it crisscross on the whole fender. And the only reason I do that, I don't try to sand anything off or fix anything. All I did that for was to see the highs and lows. And once I could see them, I took my straight edge, checked all the highs and lows, because, I mean, a lot of them will come out with a little bit of primer. Again, this stuff is awesome. Do 2, maybe 3 coats of that, you've got lots of block material. However, there's going to be a couple spots right here. There's a hard low down there, and then up in here. So there's 3 spots where I'm going to smooth out a little bit of filler, and I'm going to just block that into the metal. Then when we prime it, the rest of it could be blocked out. So why do I tell people to check these corners? So here, I'm going to sit down on the floor. Excuse my terrible camera work. All right, here's your door gap. It's really, really good, and then it starts to get tight, which sucks. I'm gonna have to come up to here. So what I'm gonna have to do here is I'm gonna have to start about here, and I'm basically gonna take a grinder, and I'm gonna cut a line right down here. Now I don't wanna go too close to this edge. Yeah, look at the bottom. So that door overlaps. So that sucks. Now I can probably adjust it in a little bit, but not till we fix this. Now the rocker, someone's got some kind of weird patch underneath the filler. Here it's good, and then here you got this tip up. Some guys will grind the edge of the door and re-weld it. We're not going to do that. We're going to cut this, and we're going to cut this all the way up. We're going to put a slice in it to the corner. We're going to knock it down where it should be and weld it back closed, right? So sometimes you got to close the crack, cut it again, close the crack. You know what I mean? Had this been checked, you could have played with it. And the other thing, they tried to put these panels on really, really tight. So what I mean by that, the door skin was put on so tight, I think they actually warped the door. everything is on so tight that then like the gaps in the trunk lid it's too much. Like you almost think that they tried to jam everything in real tight. Sometimes you just got to float stuff on there and kind of move it around and see where it fits good. Now you can see up here where the new quarter, wider than what probably was there. I don't think they're that wide. But these quarters aren't perfect. So you see all these little dots of yellow and whatnot. If you run your hand right, say, this far away from the door, smooth, smooth, smooth. But when you come up to here, this is all wavy and basically hammered. It's, yeah, it's terrible. So I don't know if that's from them knocking it in with a hammer. And then, of course, look at this. That should be there. And then down here it goes to nothing. They just went ahead and, well, I'm working down here, so they filled the whole thing with Bondo. Now, I'm not even going to attempt to fix that because, I mean, like, this lad thought it was all jammed and everything. As you can see, the jams are all yellow. Yeah, there wasn't much overlap, but I wish he would have just brought it to me, not done it all. But it is what it is. So the whole idea was, can we save the car? Now, everything under the car is really good and solid. It measures out square. We put it into the alignment and they threw it on the rack and did like the 4 wheels and like there was no issues. And rockers, like, you know, like the work he did is pretty good. But then for some reason, like the stuff that needs to be nice and finished, yeah, not so much. And he had help for that stuff, which is ironic. But I think, you know, you get a guy to come over and you pay him whatever, and it's kind of an on-the-side deal, I'd imagine, if it's at his house, right? So who knows what kind of work you're going to get. Oh, man, that's like so nice right here. And then right here, it's like so rough. Like, so that's going to have to all be filled out into the panel and blocked off. So I figure if I'm doing those back there, might as well do this right away. So I'm going to pause this for now. I'm going to do my cuts. And then I'll be back. Actually, I won't do a pause. What I'm going to do this in one video, and we'll do the other one in a part 2. All right, thanks.